The primetime address that wasn't. No seal, no flag-draped podium, no careful diplomatic preamble. Just a foreign leader, an American cable news network, and a message delivered directly to your living room. What you witnessed at 7:47 p.m. Eastern Time, if you were watching, was not an interview. It was not a press tour. It was a calculated surgical strike on the credibility of the sitting President of the United States, executed in plain sight. Mark Carney, the leader of Canada, looked into a CNN camera and spent 37 minutes building a case against Donald Trump. He bypassed the White House. He ignored State Department protocol. He did not wait for a joint press conference or a diplomatic back channel. He went straight to the American people, and he did something no foreign leader has dared to do in modern memory. He acted as a prosecutor, and he put your own government on trial. Think about the sheer audacity of that move for a moment. A foreign head of government, on American soil, using American airwaves, to tell Americans that their own president broke the law, broke a treaty, and then lied about it. That is not diplomacy. That is not negotiation. That is a hostile takeover of the narrative. And it happened while Washington was still deciding what to have for dinner. The media has spent weeks framing this as a story of American dominance, of Trump strong-arming a weaker neighbor, of Canada simply reacting, but what Carney did tonight flips that entire script on its head. Because if the United States was truly in control, if this was really a position of strength, then why would Canada take a risk this enormous? Why step into the lion's den, unless you believe you have evidence so damning that it will change the entire shape of the conflict? Here is what Carney did, and pay close attention because the structure matters more than the words. He did not ramble. He did not get emotional. He delivered 6 sentences, clean and sharp, that reframed everything. Canada did not start this. Canada did not violate agreements. Canada did not threaten unity. Canada did not destabilize alliances. Canada did not walk away from the table. And then the hammer, according to Mark Carney, every single one of those lines was crossed by Donald Trump. In less than 60 seconds, the story was no longer about a Canadian Prime Minister pushing back. It was about a trusted partner being pushed too far. It was about a smaller nation defending itself against a larger one that had decided to tear up the rulebook. And whether you support Trump or not, you have to admit the delivery was airtight. It felt like a closing argument before the defense even had a chance to speak. Then came the line that will be replayed for weeks. Carney said, flatly, without shouting, that Canada is responding to a partner that chose to treat us as an enemy. Not a competitor, not a rival, an enemy. That single word rewrites the entire relationship. We are no longer talking about trade disputes or tariff schedules. We are talking about alliances, about trust, about whether the United States still honors the agreements it helped write. And Carney did not stop at rhetoric. He reached for a prop, but not a cheap one. He held up the actual text of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, the trade deal that Trump himself signed and called the best deal ever. He pointed to specific clauses, walked viewers through the language like a professor teaching a class, and made it clear, no tariffs allowed under these conditions, no gray area, no fine print. He then cited a ruling, not a divided opinion, not a controversial decision, but a unanimous international judgment stating that the United States had violated that very agreement. Let that land. On live American television, a foreign leader just showed millions of viewers that their own government signed a deal, broke that deal, and then ignored the ruling when they got caught. That is not criticism, that is exposure. And the way he delivered it made it even more devastating. No anger, no dramatic gestures, just a calm, almost clinical recitation of facts. When you say something that heavy, without raising your voice, it does not feel like an attack. It feels like a verdict. So now the question becomes unavoidable. If what Carney is saying is even partially true, then who is really escalating this situation? Who is actually pushing this toward the edge? And just when it felt like the pressure could not get any higher, Carney reached for something that changed everything. He leaned forward, he looked straight into the camera, and he said, "I believe the American people deserve to hear this." That was not a commentary, that was a warning. And then he played the audio. According to Carney, the call was recorded as standard procedure. But here is the detail that made this explosive. Donald Trump knew it was being recorded. No denial, no claim of a secret tap, no escape hatch. This was on the record, whether Washington liked it or not. The audio started the way you might expect. Tough language, hard negotiation, the kind of blunt tone that Trump supporters call strength. But then it kept going, and suddenly it crossed a line that no amount of spin could clean up. Trump was heard dismissing Canada's sovereignty as nonsense. He mocked their defense commitments. He was not negotiating, he was demanding compliance. And then came the sentence that froze every room where the broadcast was playing. A direct threat to crush Canada's economy, to cut them off from energy, to isolate them, to turn a longtime ally into what he described as an economic wasteland. Let that sit for a second. That is not leverage. That is not tough negotiation. That is raw, unvarnished pressure delivered behind closed doors, meant for one set of ears, now broadcast to millions. In that instant, this stopped being about tariffs or policy disagreements. This became about power, about how far a leader is willing to go when he thinks nobody else is listening. Except now, everybody was listening. And the reaction was not immediate outrage, it was silence. The kind of silence that spreads when people are trying to process something they were not supposed to hear. Living rooms went quiet, newsrooms froze, and somewhere inside the West Wing, you can bet phones started ringing all at once, because once those words are out, you do not get to take them back. Within minutes, the clip was everywhere. Social media exploded. Networks replayed it on a loop. Millions became tens of millions. By midnight, it was not just America watching, it was the entire world. And here is the real problem for the White House. They did not deny it. They did not call it fake. They did not say it was fabricated. Instead, the response was familiar. Taken out of context. Out of context. What context makes threatening an ally acceptable? What context turns economic destruction into diplomacy? There is not one, and deep down people know it. Because when the defense shifts from "that did not happen to you," did not hear the full version, what you are really admitting is simple. It did happen, and that is the trap. But if you think that audio was the peak of this confrontation, you are missing what came next, because Carney was not finished. He shifted gears from revelation to pressure, real pressure, the kind that does not just sit on television screens, but follows people into their wallets, their gas tanks, their daily lives. He confirmed a deadline, March 18th, 8 days, no vague language, no diplomatic cushioning, just a ticking clock dropped into American living rooms on CNN. And then calmly, almost casually, he laid out the consequences. Energy exports cut, trade agreements suspended, defense cooperation scaled back, financial systems disrupted, one layer after another, heavier each time, like a slow tightening grip. And here is what made it different. He did not pretend Americans would not feel it. He looked straight into the camera and admitted it. Gas prices would rise, bills would go up, economic pain, real pain, would hit ordinary people. For a brief moment, it almost sounded like concern, like empathy. And then came the pivot. This is not your fault. That line was surgical, because in one move, he separated the American people from their own leadership. Not America as a nation, not the citizens, just one man, Donald Trump. He was not attacking the country, he was isolating the president. That is not diplomacy, that is psychological warfare. And then he raised the stakes even higher. He said he believed most Americans, once they saw the evidence, would actually support Canada's position. Think about that. A foreign leader on American television, claiming your own citizens would side with him over their own president. That is not just bold, that is calculated to create doubt, to plant a seed that grows long after the broadcast ends. Who was his real audience? Washington or you? Because by this point, Carney was not negotiating anymore. He was building pressure from the outside in. Public opinion first, political consequences second. And if that pressure builds strong enough, it does not matter what gets said behind closed doors. The outcome is already shaped. And then came the move that turned all of this from pressure into a perfectly engineered trap. Carney did not raise his voice, did not throw insults, did not even look emotional. He simply looked straight into the camera and addressed one man directly. Mr. President, I invite you to debate me live. Any network, anytime, any moderator you choose. That was not a suggestion. That was a challenge crafted with surgical precision. Think about the position it puts Donald Trump in. If he accepts, he walks straight into a live confrontation where Carney shows up loaded with documents, legal rulings, and that explosive audio, calm, prepared, and ready to go round for round in front of the entire country. But if he refuses, he does not look strategic. He does not look presidential. He looks like he is avoiding the fight. Two choices, both dangerous, no clean exit, and then Carney delivered the line that sealed it. Do you have the courage? 5 words. That is all it took. Because whether people admit it or not, no leader in America wants to be seen as lacking courage. And in that moment, Carney planted that doubt directly into the minds of millions watching, not with anger, not with noise, with precision. Less than 30 minutes later, Trump fired back, not through a press conference, not standing behind the seal of the presidency. On social media, he called Carney a liar, a coward. He said the audio was taken out of context, and he rejected the debate outright, calling it beneath the presidency. But here is the problem. Millions of Americans had just watched 37 minutes of calm, controlled, evidence-driven presentation. No shouting, no chaos, just a steady stream of claims backed by documents and audio. So when the response came back as insults and dismissal, it did not land like strength. It landed like defense. And worse, by saying the audio was out of context, he confirmed the one thing the White House needed to avoid confirming, that it was real. He did not deny the words. He tried to explain them, and that is a losing position every single time. So now we are here, 8 days on the clock, two possible paths. Either Trump backs down and meets Canada's demands, or he escalates and risks dragging both nations into deeper economic damage. But here is the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. After tonight, the battlefield has changed. This is no longer just about trade. It is no longer about tariffs or negotiations. This is about perception, about credibility, about who the American people believe when the noise dies down. And right now, whether you like it or not, Mark Carney is not the one on defense. The president is.